Welcome to the anniversary edition of America Uncanceled. Yes, Matt, it is an anniversary. It might not be the show's anniversary, but it is our 20th anniversary. So, honey, I want to wish you a happy anniversary. 20 years.
It's a long time.
Yeah, and you still had a lot of gray hair, I have to say.
I always had white hair the whole time we've dated.
It must be all the stress. It must be all the stress.
I did start losing my hair too, but that seemed to have stopped, so that's good.
That's interesting. So in the 20 years, what advice do you give these couples that are thinking about getting married?
So we all complain. I must use another word.
What are you saying? You've been
we all
for the
complain
last
about
20
being
years?
married. It's like typical in our culture for men to be like, oh my gosh, marriage. And you tell single guys, oh, take your time. You don't want to rush into that. And I remember being with Rick Santorum in Hungary. And he said, if more married people talked about how they actually like being married, maybe more people would decide to get married. And I have to say, I've been alive a long time. The married part of my life has been the best.
Oh, that's
And
so
I think
sweet.
more people should say that. I mean, they're actually,
agree.
marriages aren't perfect. You had to live with me, which comes with a
Tough.
lot of downsides.
Very, very, very tough.
I have a lot of rules. And, but the bottom line is it's been a great chapter. So thanks for having patience.
Well, thank you. It comes with a lot of prayer, I have to say, Schlapp. But I do think, I always say when I talk to young folks across the country, I always say the same thing. I'm like, if marriage is your vocation, because not everyone's meant to be married, but if marriage is your vocation, the most important decision you're going to make in your life is who you choose as your spouse.
And
so pick well or don't pick at all, okay? Because I got to say, it really is something that I think my mom probably prayed you in, but it really is about the life's journey that you have with this person. And the other thing is have lots of kids. It's such a beauty. Having a big family, if you can, is something is something that is so special, so unique. Yes, it comes with a lot of stress sometimes, but it comes with a lot of joy, a lot of laughter, and it really creates this beautiful, in our case, sisterhood between the girls, and really, really, what I would say is a very special family.
Yeah, no, and I was just going to say, I love this idea about being careful who you pick.
Right.
We took our sweet time in getting married, you would say, right?
Not really.
Yeah, we did. I was old.
No.
But the point is this, which is I do think it's like one of the most important decisions.
Right.
And I do tell that for young people that work at CPAC, and when the interns come in, I'm saying, pick wisely.
Yes.
Because in my opinion, once you start having kids with someone, you kind of got them forever.
Pretty much.
And if you pick a real stinker, you're dealing with that person forever.
But you have to admit, at CPAC, there have been more marriages that have come out, more engagements, more boyfriend, girlfriends. Like, it's amazing. So remember, go to CPAC, Texas. It's happening August 4th through the 7th. It's going to be a fabulous event. Who knows? You might meet the man or woman of your dreams.
Thanks, everybody. And we have a great show for you. We got Senator Bill Hagerty coming up, 92% AC or CPAC rating in Congress for his great conservative votes, and someone who was the ambassador to Japan. We're going to be talking about his personal insights into this tragic assassination of Shinzo Abe, the former prime minister of Japan. And we're going to be right back with that interview after this short break. Yeah, had some tragic news, as you all know, with this assassination of a great friend of America, former Prime Minister Abe of Japan. You all know the story about how Japanese conservatives have been partnering with us. They've started a Japanese Conservative Union. We've had CPAC in Tokyo many years in a row now, run by Jay Aiba. And while we were in Japan for one of those historic CPACs, we got to meet the American ambassador, newly minted in the Trump administration. That man is now a senator, a conservative senator from the state of Tennessee, and that's Bill Hagerty. Senator Hagerty, thanks for being with us again on CPAC Now.
Certainly, Matt. It's great to be back with you.
So, this relationship, first of all, the relationship between Japan and America was strengthened over the Trump years. But the relationship between the two leaders was strong as well. And you were all part of the glue of that relationship. What was your reaction when you heard this terrible news?
I was absolutely heartbroken, Matt. Prime Minister Abe is someone I deeply respected. I worked very closely with him when I served as U.S. ambassador. Frankly, I was with him last April, April of this year, continuing to work with him in my role in the Senate, and he is a parliamentarian. He's been somebody that has been a tremendous ally to America. He also was a personal friend of mine, and it's just heartbreaking to see this tragedy unfold. He will, I think, be viewed as perhaps the most consequential prime minister of Japan in modern history. He's certainly the longest serving prime minister of Japan, and he has made an incredible mark, an indelible mark, if you think about it, on the entire Asia Pacific region. It was Prime Minister Abe who coined the phrase free and open Indo-Pacific. That's the strategy that the Trump administration followed. It's the strategy that the Biden administration continues to follow. That's the architecture that the Quad was born from, the Quad being the partnership between India, Australia, Japan, and the United States to keep the most busy commerce lanes, that area in that region open and free, and to really push back against the incredible pressures and the aggression of communist China. So Prime Minister Abe has done a great service to the world in terms of articulating that strategy, bringing our nations together to work together in that regard, to increase our national security, our economic security, at a time when China has proven to be a tremendous aggressor. The world's going to miss Prime Minister Abe, but his legacy, his impact is going to live on.
Do you think, there's all this talk about this President Trump come back and run again for president? Abe had stepped down due to his health. He seemed to be a bit of a kingmaker in this most recent election and in these questions about who would lead his party. Was it going to be him?
Well, indeed, Abe was the most influential member of the Japanese parliament and their parliamentarian system. He had a lot to do with who succeeded him. First, it was Prime Minister Suga, then Prime Minister Kishida. If you look at the policies that both Suga and Kishida are now following, they very much are moving along in the mold of Prime Minister Abe, pursuing his vision, stepping up Japan's posture from a defense standpoint, working more closely with America. Those are all the fingerprints of Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. And I think we're going to continue to see that movement because the Japanese public appreciate the legacy of Shinzo Abe, and I think they want to see it continue. And under the current prime minister's watch, we've seen the defense budget of Japan move to a doubling, going from 1% of GDP to 2% of GDP. That's a significant move. When we were together in April of this year, I was certainly encouraging to continue to work together as they expand that, not only to make it a procurement exercise, but to spend more time training with America, to spend every amount of time that we can to ensure our interoperability and our capabilities are the strongest that they possibly can be as we work together in that region. And you know this, Matt, America has more U.S. military stationed in Japan than any place else in the world. It's a critical strategic alliance. And in that regard, seeing Japan step up, and again, this is Prime Minister Abe's leadership, to step up and work hard in the Indo-Pacific region makes a real difference for the globe's security.
We started talking about this in CPAC Japan 4 years ago, and this whole idea of, what was appropriate for Japan to do to be militarily ready. So this gets us into the next topic, which I think people are really worried about. You have the national media in America completely transfixed on Vladimir Putin, on Ukraine. Some of your colleagues are talking about, extraordinary amounts of money being transferred to try to stop Putin. But for many people like yourself, for people like Donald Trump, their focus always was on the rise of China, the aggressive posture of China. Many of us are worried with a weakened American president. What is China going to do? What's the latest vis-a-vis China's aggressive behavior in the neighborhood?
Well, China's aggression continues, and I think the collapse of Afghanistan really put that on steroids. China watched what happened as the Biden administration capitulated, folded in Afghanistan. We basically cut and ran. We left our allies hanging there, and we've emboldened our adversaries. And from that point forward, China has really stepped up its aggressive posture in the Taiwan Strait. I think that China is also watching what's happening in Ukraine, and I can imagine the conversation between Vladimir Putin and President Xi at the beginning of the Olympics that occurred back this winter. And I can only imagine that Putin told Xi that, yes, he's going to move on Ukraine the same way as he did Crimea. He probably expected it to be an up and down exercise, a few days, a week, it would be over. They vastly underestimated the response of the Ukrainian people. I think that Putin probably persuaded Xi that he would divide NATO. In fact, NATO has become stronger as a part of, as a result of all of this. And he probably said the United States would get wrapped around its axle politically. And to the extent that the Biden administration had to be pulled along by the likes of Germany, I think, shocking as it was, they seem to have landed in a place where they're in a better posture than Xi would have ever expected. At the same time, we've got to avoid getting bogged down in Ukraine, because the bigger threat facing America is precisely in the region we're talking about right now. That's the threat of China. And their aggression is felt on an economic basis. They steal intellectual property. They subsidize industries deeply so they can come in and conquer, entire markets. If you look at it from a military standpoint, they are aggressively building their military. They now have more ships than the United States Navy. And from a diplomatic standpoint as well, Matt, we've seen them move into large organizations like the United Nations, the World Health Organization, take undue influence. So we have to be ready at every front. China's going to continue to test us. I'm not trying to minimize the fact that we want to see Ukraine win, and we want to see Vladimir Putin, in a very different place. But we cannot take our eye off the larger ball, and that's what's happening.
Bill Walton has a show on our network, and he's had many guests on talking about the atrophying of the U.S. military readiness and comparing that to what China is doing. And it's a scary topic. A lot of people have different ideas of how we should handle all the questions around the LGBTQ community, but it is alarming, no matter what your viewpoint is on those kinds of questions. And obviously CPAC takes very traditional views on all these questions. When you see the military spending all of this money on promotional materials talking about how trans soldiers will get their full medical services, and highlighting trans roles at the Pentagon. You've seen all of this promotional materials with military hardware being put in the colors of the rainbow to match the pride flag. It's like no matter what your views are on these questions, that is insane that the messages we're sending overseas is that the Pentagon is much more into like team building than they are in killing people who want to destroy America from the outside. Are your colleagues alarmed at the fact that the Pentagon and General Milley and others have seemed to lost their way on what their mission is?
Certainly my Republican colleagues are concerned. We want to see the most lethal force in the world. We need to be standing in a posture of strength, Matt. You're touching on this. The primary objective here needs to be a strong posture, a strong defensive posture, one that will be respected by our enemies, one that will be appreciated by our allies. That's where the priority needs to be. And we need to be thinking about technology. We see a very aggressive China and Russia looking at hypersonics, looking at new means of creating havoc around the world. We've got to be stepping up and responding to that. And we need to be working very closely with our allies. Again, training together in joint exercises, working on the latest technology. And that is the focus. That should be the focus of our military and nothing else.
We have all of these questions overseas that really raise people's concerns. Politically, I've just come back from trips to Kansas and Oklahoma. I know you're traveling all over the place. Both Mercy and I have been we feel like all over the country, which is quite an honor to go to all these interesting places and talk to these candidates and such. I still think I feel very, very optimistic about what's going to happen in November. If you get power, if you get the majority in the Senate, we understand that you need a supermajority to do everything. And we understand that Joe Biden or some Democrat will still be president. On these basic questions of rebuilding our military, closing the southern border, are Republican senators starting to come up with a strategy on what they'll demand in that very first budget bill? That's the whole enchilada. Excuse me, I'm quoting Joe Biden, but that's the whole enchilada. This question about, what gets in that first budget bill. And Mitch McConnell and other Senate leaders, they get very uncomfortable with getting too aggressive when it comes to that budget vehicle because they always see as a political downside if Republicans push too hard. I don't see any other political way out, but to fight very hard on that first budget vehicle to get something undone that Biden has broken, whether it's the military, whether it's the southern border. Are these kinds of conversations starting, or is everyone kind of worried to talk about victory before victory?
Well, I think that we're all rightly concerned that we don't put the cart before the horse. We've got to focus on winning in November, Matt. That's the overarching objective. I believe we can. We will not get to a point, though, that we have the supermajority necessary to override a veto. So we're going to have to be, careful as we proceed. But something very important is going to happen as well. A strong message is going to be sent to Joe Biden and the Democrat Party. There needs to be a massive change in their posture. The polls are already reflecting this. Joe Biden's got rock bottom numbers right now. When they see the results manifest themselves, I hope it'll be a sobering moment for this administration. I hope we'll see changes at the White House and their staff, and the radical policies that they're pushing forward right now are being rejected by the American public on a wholesale basis. I think those results will be reflected in the midterm elections. I hope that will help the Biden administration reconsider, and we need to be at the ready to push back and do everything we can to, again, restore the security at our southern border. If you think about it from the standpoint of my home state, Matt, we have each month worse results in terms of drug overdoses and deaths from drug overdoses than the month before. The statistics are staggering. The biggest killer of young people in America now between 18 and age 45, drug overdose deaths. And these are drugs coming across that southern border, mostly fentanyl, sourced with precursors from China. The Chinese Communist Party working together with the cartels in Mexico. They control the entire northern border of Mexico right now. And they have taken control of our border. And the results are just catastrophic. The last numbers I got, 163 different nationalities have been apprehended at our southern border since Joe Biden took office. The United Nations only recognizes about 190 different countries. I mean, this is a national security crisis of epic proportions. So we've got to step back and say that America's security is paramount, that our young people who are dying from fentanyl overdoses is paramount. We got to step back up and deal with the fact that we've got crime at record levels in our cities. No one's in control, and the Biden administration is completely out to lunch. That message is going to be sent loud and clear in the midterms. That's what we'll need to have to help push back on this, and I think we'll have a mandate from the American people to do just that.
My encouragement to conservatives like you in the Senate, to your colleagues and to your colleagues in the House is you don't want to put the cart before the horse. You don't want to get cocky or arrogant. The voters don't like that, and they shouldn't like that because those are vices, not virtues. By the same token, we're going to have to quickly figure out what we'll fight on. And you just went through the numbers. I just wanted to read it real quickly. Today, Real Clear Politics average, Joe Biden is at 38.5%. His disapproval is almost at 60%. The generic ballot for Republicans, they've been leading all year. They're up by almost 3 points. But this is the one that really gets me. The right direction, when people ask whether America's on the right direction, only 18% of Americans think we're on the right track. If you were running a company and 18% of the shareholders thought you were doing a good job as the CEO, you'd probably get kicked out.
Yeah.
This is the Democrats' biggest problem, right?
You're exactly right, Matt. People can see it. And I think the thing that permeates most was just posted, you look at the CPI number that just came out, 9.1% now. And it's accelerating. It was 8.6% last month. The rate of inflation is going up. If you look at it month to month, if you look at it quarter to quarter, we've got an acceleration. The Biden administration has lost control of the economy. And I'm very concerned about what the GDP print is going to be at the end of this quarter. Very likely, we're going to find ourselves technically in a recession. The Biden administration is completely to blame for this. They're the ones that pushed this reconciliation package that they did last March that was really adding fuel to the fire. The economy was already moving back in a very strong way to recovery, and they threw $2 trillion worth of new spending in. But perhaps the most pernicious aspect of it is their energy policy, Matt. And if you think about it, energy costs are an input to so many things here in America. Goods have to be transported. Many things that are manufactured, like fertilizer, have big energy cost, big energy input into them. And every person in my home state of Tennessee has got to drive to work. They are persistent in not doing anything except pushing back against the oil and gas industry here. They've waged war on oil and gas here in America. Biden is on his way to Saudi Arabia to, I presume, beg them to produce more. They're dealing with Maduro, a terrorist in Venezuela, a killer. They'd rather deal with international killers than American drillers. And it's a disgrace. We've now got oil prices, gas prices at the pump right now. My home state are over $5 a gallon, man. And this inflationary pressure, this is a record level of gas prices. Inflation is the highest it's been in 41 years. And we have got a huge problem that the American public can feel, and they're going to let their voice be known.
And who was president 41 years ago? A golden oldie, Jimmy Carter. And Jimmy Carter helped give the loser status to the Democrats for a long time. And I'm not rooting for America to lose, but I am rooting for Americans to reject these policies. And on the gas thing, just remember, he ran on the Green New Deal. The Green New Deal has one of its top 10 goals, $5, $6, $7 a gallon gas. This is all done on purpose because they want you to stop using. They want fuel to be too expensive to use, and there's no alternative to it. Not that I've seen, except for bicycles. And I've been to Tennessee. It's a big state. You're not going to get from border to border on a bicycle.
Yeah. You know, I asked President Biden's nominee for comptroller of the currency, Dr. Omarova, whether high gas prices were good or bad for America. She wouldn't answer the question. She said it was a trick question. You know, this is the way they think about things. They want high gas prices. It's exactly as you say. They want to accelerate the payback analysis for all of these green technologies that aren't even developed yet. And they want to push us toward a green solution that is non-existent. In the meantime, Americans are feeling tremendous pain. Not only is it reflected in these, you know, massively inflationary numbers that we're seeing come out every month, but it's real pain. And if you think about it, Matt, we're in a situation now where if we have any type of dislocation like a hurricane, we may be seeing real diesel fuel outages in America. That's going to have huge impact on our supply chain. I'm deeply concerned.
It's tragic, and really you can get yourself in an awful bad mood when you think about the disasters of the Biden administration. But today's a big day because it's the 20th anniversary of my marriage to Mercedes. And in celebration of the failures of the Biden administration, I'm going to take her out for tacos. What do you think, Senator?
Well, you and Mercy have a great time. I enjoy her as well. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to see her today, but happy anniversary to both of you. You've built a great family together. And
thank you, Senator.